Candle Part 1. The Wife's Last Night. Narrator. Lan, the deceased, recalling her last night. That night, the moon was strangely bright. So bright that everything in my old house seemed to be covered with a layer of cold silver. I still remember clearly, the oil lamp on the table kept flickering, as if it was also afraid. Trembling before what was about to happen. My name is Lan. That year I was 26 years old, and had been married to my husband for nearly 4 years. His name was Hung, the man who once held my hand in the middle of the spring market and swore, "For the rest of my life, I only have you, Lan." I believed with all the foolishness of a woman who only knew how to live for love. I built this house with him. Every piece of tile, every areca tree in the yard had my handprint on it. Every time he came home late from work, I would sit by the door, light the lamp, just hoping to hear the familiar footsteps. But then, those footsteps gradually changed. No longer hurried and warm, but cold, heavy, and unfamiliar. I began to realize that there was something in his eyes that I could not reach. At first, I comforted myself, thinking that he must be tired, that he must have work to do. But a wife's intuition is never wrong. I saw him avoid my gaze, saw the strange scent on his shirt, felt every word he said as if it were a thorn stabbing into my heart. Once, I asked, "Mr. Hung, have you been worried about anything lately? Or did I do something to make you sad?" He did not look at me, just said briefly, "Don't ask too many questions." "I'm tired." I kept quiet. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I was afraid that if I said it, everything would really fall apart. I thought if I could be patient a little longer, if I could love a little more, maybe he would come back. But there are things, the tighter I hold on, the more they slip away. And I didn't know that night was the last night of my life. It started to rain, the first rain of the season, drizzling like the cry of the earth and sky. I sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the rain falling on the old tiled roof, listening to my heart breaking. On the table, the pot of soup was cold. He hadn't come home yet. I kept waiting, until the sound of his footsteps echoed outside the alley, but there was more than one person. A woman's voice rang out. Small but enough for me to recognize. It was Thao, the fabric seller at the market below. The person I'd heard rumors about recently. They said he often went there, stood there watching her for hours. I'd never believed what people said, but the laughter that night, I couldn't deny it. I quietly walked out onto the porch, standing behind the bamboo blinds. The bright moon illuminated the two figures close together. He smiled, a smile that I hadn't seen for myself in a long time. Thou whispered something, I couldn't hear clearly, I only saw him nod. His eyes cold as frost. In that moment, I understood. There was no way back for this love. I turned back into the house. On my mother's altar, I lit an incense stick. My mother died early. And while she was still alive, she always taught me, the most precious thing in being a human is a kind heart. Even if someone harms you, don't harbor resentment. Accumulating resentment only drags the soul into darkness. I clasped my hands and whispered, "Mom, I have tried to be kind and patient, but why can't I keep this happiness? If this is the karma I have to pay, I accept it. But if anyone is sowing bad karma, may God and Buddha witness it. Let them pay for it themselves, without my resentment." The incense stick burned red. The smoke billowed. I felt my heart soften, but the coldness became more and more evident. I remember, when the oil lamp was about to go out, I heard the door open behind me. I turned around, saw his eyes, cold, unfamiliar. And behind him was Thao. They walked in, said a few words in low voices, then the moonlight suddenly went out. Everything blurred like mist. I don't know what happened after that. I just felt light, as if I had just fallen out of a dream. I heard the wind blowing past my ears, saw my body lying there, motionless, my eyes still open, staring at the ceiling. I wanted to scream, to run back, to shake myself awake, but I couldn't. I just stood there, looking at the body that was me, just a second ago. A fear filled me. I reached out, through the air. I touched his shoulder, but my hand went through him like smoke. He didn't know I was there. He turned around, said something to Thou. They looked at each other. Then left, leaving me, leaving my cold body on the ground. I stood still for a long time. I no longer felt like a living person. No pain, no cold, no hunger, no fatigue. There was only an empty space, endlessly wide. Then from somewhere, my mother's voice seemed to echo in my head. Lan, don't hate. Hatred only makes you fall. Let go. But how could I let go? When I saw the person who had sworn to be by my side, now turning his back, even trampling on my trust and leaving. How can I let go when I see myself dying like an unjust dream? And no one knows the truth? I want to cry, but my soul has no tears. There is only the wind, and in the wind, I hear someone whispering, it is my voice. If I have to suffer in this life, I will let go, but whoever creates the karma, they must pay for it. I saw the moonlight in the yard shatter into pieces. The wind swirled around the roof, as if someone was calling my name, far away. I looked back at the house, at my shadow on the ground. Then slowly walked out onto the porch. With each step, I felt my feet become lighter, my body more transparent. Under the moonlight, I saw a white smoke escape my body. That smoke slowly floated up, then dissipated. At that moment, I understood. I was no longer human. That night was the last night I heard the sound of the moon falling on the roof. I didn't know where I would go, where I would return. I only knew that, between the boundary of life and death, there was still something that had not ended. Not because I wanted revenge, but because my heart was not at peace. Love, when it turns into resentment, does not die. It turns into an invisible bond, pulling the soul between two worlds. I stayed, to watch, to know. Those who have hurt me, how will they face the karma they created? But that is a story for the days to come. Tonight, I just stood under the silver moonlight, looked at my body for the last time. Then smiled softly, a sad smile, but peaceful. Well then, in this life, the debt of karma is paid. As for karma, let the wind, the moon, and karma take care of themselves. And when I said that, the wind suddenly blew strongly. The oil lamp went out. Everything was quiet. Only me, a soul that had just woken up, in the dim world, looked back at my life like looking at an unfinished dream. End of Part 1. The last night of the wife, the beginning of Lan's soul's journey back. In Part 2, the return of the soul. Part 2. The soul returns. Lan's story. After death, the soul still lingers in the mortal world. When I left my body, I thought all the pain had ended. But no, that was just the beginning. The other world was not like I had heard about. There was no bright white light, no angelic music, and no one to welcome me. There was only a vast cold space. I was alone floating in the mist, seeing everything but touching nothing. I tried calling my mother's name, calling my husband's name, but no one answered. Only my own echo echoed in the void. Lan, Lan, Lan. That voice sounded so far away, like a lost call in the wind. I wandered for who knows how long. Time in that world seemed to not pass. I only know that every time I remember what happened that night, my heart is filled with an unnamed choking feeling. I saw other souls, they drifted by like smoke, their eyes lifeless, neither speaking nor laughing. Some still carried their dead form, some were only faint as mist. I asked them, where should I go? No one answered. An old soul, with silver hair, looked at me. His voice hoarse. I cannot go yet. Because I am still attached. I was surprised. What do you mean by attached? He just smiled, a toothless smile. Affixed with karma, attached with hatred, attached with love. When the heart has not let go, the soul cannot be liberated. After saying that, he disappeared. I sat there, in the mist. Suddenly understanding, that's right. I cannot go yet, because I still have heavy feelings for the living. In the early days, I just stood there watching. I saw people discover my body. Neighbors came running, some crying, some whispering. Some said I committed suicide because of love. Some said I was possessed by a ghost. No one knew, my death was not accidental. I saw Hung bow his head before my body. His face was pale, sweating profusely. He did not cry. He just stared, as if looking at an old, broken object. Then they buried me by the river bank, where the bamboo trees rustled in the wind. Every time the moon rose, the river water reflected the light. My grave lay there, silent. I stood beside it, watching people fill the soil over my body, listening to the sound of the hoe pounding down, each blow like a blow to my heart. The soil covered it. Everyone went home. Only the wind and the sound of insects remained. I sat by the grave, silent. I thought that when I died, the pain would stop. But no, the pain was still there, except that no one could see it anymore. The first night I returned home. The door was still closed like the night I left. I touched it, it opened without making a sound. Everything was still intact, the wooden table, the curtain. His shirt hanging on the wall, and that woman, thou, was sleeping in my bed. Hung lay next to me. I stood in the dark corner, watching the two of them sleeping soundly. On the pillow, thou's hair covered his shoulder. The moonlight from the porch shone in, illuminating their faces, peaceful, happy. As for me, cold, lonely, lost like a wisp of smoke. I don't resent, really. I just feel choked with pain. The person who once said he loved me, now lies in the arms of the person who took my life. I don't know if I should cry or laugh. I walked around the house. Every object. Every corner of the kitchen. Every place I used to sit and sew clothes. Everything was familiar, but it seemed like it no longer belonged to me. On the altar, the wedding photo was still there. But he had turned it around. I trembled as I reached out to touch it. The photo fell to the ground. The sound of the broken glass frame startled him awake. He looked around, mumbling, "It's just the wind." Then he lay down again, hugging thou tightly. I stood there, looking, and felt the distance between the two worlds had never been so clear. Night after night, I still lingered around that house. At first just to look, then gradually, my heart became heavier. Every time I saw him smile at her, my heart ached, a pain that made even the wind stop. There were times I felt a cold airflow through me, clearly hearing a whisper, "If you don't let go, you will turn into resentment." I was afraid. I didn't want to become something scary. But the more afraid I was, the more I couldn't escape. One night, thou looked in the mirror. In the mirror, I saw my face clearly, blurry behind her. She turned around in surprise, but saw only emptiness. From then on, every night she dreamed of me, wet hair, red eyes, standing at the end of the bed. She screamed, waking up in fear. Hung coaxed me, saying it was just a nightmare. But every night, I appeared again. Not intentionally, just because I couldn't rest. As time passed, I began to feel myself fading away. My heart no longer ached, but turned into a terrible emptiness. I didn't know who I was, why I was still here. Then one night, the sound of a temple bell echoed from afar. The bell sounded like a beam of light shining through the mist. I turned towards it. In an instant, I saw the shadow of a nun, a gentle figure, holding a rosary. She looked at me and said softly, "You are pitiful, more than hateful." But your karma is not over because you have not forgiven. When your heart can look at the person who caused you suffering without hatred, then you can go. I was silent. I have not forgiven. I cannot forgive. I want to, but every time I remember death, I see blood, see darkness, see him and thou laughing. She chanted Buddha's name, then disappeared in the incense smoke. I knelt down and cried. For the first time since my death, I cried. Not because of resentment, but because I realized I was imprisoning myself in my own hell. I returned to the house once more. Hung was sick, thin, his eyes were vacant. People rumored that since the day I died, he often saw a white shadow in the yard. He no longer smiled, no longer drank alcohol. Thou was haunted, often cried, often screamed in the night. I looked at them, suddenly feeling sorry for them. Sorry because they were living as if they were dead. Sorry because I used to love him, used to believe that he was everything. Now looking at him trembling in the rain, I understand, karma has come. But my heart also understood. I didn't come back to take revenge. I came back to see the truth, that everything was over. The person who caused the karma had begun to bear it. There was no need for me to do anything more. I stood on the porch, watching the rainfall. The moon was no longer as bright as before, only lightning flashed in the night sky. I softly said, Hung, I used to love you very much. That love now is no longer resentment, no longer pain. It is just a trace of mist, drifting away. Then I turned, leaving the house, leaving the familiar road, leaving my old life. In the distance, I heard the temple bell again. This time, the sound was warmer, lighter, like a guide. I smiled softly. For the first time since I died, I felt my heart lighten. The light in the distance called me. I knew it was time for me to go. But I still have one thing left to do. Before I leave, I want to see my mother again. I want to hear an old call. And I want to know if the soul can truly be forgiven when it still dares not forgive itself. End of Part 2. The Soul Returns. The beginning of Part 3. Karma return. When Hung and Thou's karma manifests, and Lan's soul witnesses the cycle of cause and effect closing. Part 3. Karma return. Lan's story. The soul witnessing the return of karma. I thought that when I left that house, everything would end. But it turned out that the end was just the beginning of another cycle, the cycle of karma. That rainy season, the river rose. The sky was gloomy for many days. The wind carried the smell of mud and rotten grass. I often drifted quietly around the village, watching the flow of life. Sometimes I felt like a thin wisp of smoke, not belonging anywhere. Just being pushed away by the wind, then returning. One afternoon, I returned to my grave. The grass grew thick, covering the small tombstone. No one was burning incense. Not a single flower. I looked at the cold tombstone, suddenly feeling my heart tighten. When I was alive, I kept my house, my husband, and my honor. When I died, no one even cared about my grave. That was the end of a gentle woman who endured to the point of stupidity. I stood still. Suddenly, a cry echoed from afar, a woman's voice, hoarse and trembling. It was Thou. She came, holding incense, her figure haggard. No longer the proud beauty of the past. Her face was haggard, her eyes were dark, like a person who had lost her soul. She sat down in front of my grave, trembling and praying. Sister Lan, I know, I was wrong. Since the day you died, I have not had a peaceful night's sleep. I dreamed of you standing outside the window, wet hair, sad eyes. You didn't say anything, just looked at me forever. I beg you, if your soul is still around, please forgive me. I don't want it anymore. I'm so scared. As she spoke, she sobbed like a child. Tears fell to the ground, mixing with the rain. I stood right next to her, listening to every word, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She was scared. But I knew her fear was not because of regret, but because her karma had begun to take its toll. A few months later, the villagers rumored that Hung had abandoned the market and stayed home all the time. He became very strange. He didn't go to the fields, didn't eat, didn't sleep. Every night he sat on the porch, looking at the moon, muttering as if talking to someone. Lan, I was wrong. Go home. I'm not worth it. At first, people thought he missed his wife. But then, there were nights when he screamed, banged his head against the wall, and shouted, "Don't come near me. I didn't mean to. Don't touch me." People ran over, but he just sat there holding his head, trembling. His eyes were empty, his mouth still calling my name. I went there, stood there and watched. But I didn't do anything. I just watched. Because I understood, I didn't need to take revenge. Karma had found its own way. Thou then left. It is said that she went to the district market and no one saw her return. Some said she went crazy, others said she had an accident. No one knows if it is true or not. All they know is that every time it rains, people still see the shadow of a woman in white, walking along the riverbank, laughing and crying. The laughter sounds heartbreaking. As for Mr. Hung, after a while, his illness became more serious. His body was emaciated, his hair turned white after only a few months. The villagers said he was possessed. People invited a shaman, burned amulets, and set up an altar. But every time the wooden fish sounded, the lamp would go out, and the incense would break halfway. It was not because I stopped him, but because he had not yet admitted his mistake. One time, he sat by the riverbank, right where I used to wash my clothes. He held the bottle of wine, speaking as if in a dream. Lan, I know. I owe you. But I'm scared. I'm so scared of you. Every night I see you standing at the end of the bed, not saying anything, just looking at me. I listened. My heart sinking. No more resentment, only pity. Pity because he still doesn't understand. I never wanted to scare him. It's his conscience that's punishing him every day. Then came a moonlit night, exactly like the night I died. He went to the river, drunk. The moon reflected brightly on the water. He sat on the bank, saying, "If there's a next life, don't see me again. I'm not worthy." After saying that, he leaned over, and fell into the river. No one heard his screams. There was only the sound of the water rippling. The next morning, people found his body, drifting not far from where I died. His face was calm, like someone who had just slept soundly. I stood on the shore, watching his body being pulled up. No tears fell, but my heart ached strangely. Perhaps that was the last moment between two souls who once loved each other. The wind blew, carrying the scent of the old areca flowers. I felt lighter. No more anger, no more sadness. There was only a feeling of letting go. I softly said, "Go in peace, Hung. Our debt, from today, consider it paid off." That night the temple bell rang again. Not far, not near, but strangely warm. I looked in that direction, saw a faint light appear, like a path made of mist. In that light, I saw my mother. She smiled, as gentle as ever. I called softly, "Mom." She stepped closer, touching my hair. For the first time since my death, I felt warmth. "Do you understand, Lan?" Mom said. "No one can escape from karma. No one can live peacefully if they still hate. If you can forgive, then you can truly go." I nodded, tears falling like dew. I said, "I have forgiven. For them, for him, and for myself." Mom smiled. The light grew brighter, fading away, swallowing me. The wind stopped being cold. The space stopped being dark. Before melting into that light, I turned back to look at the world one last time. Looking at the river, looking at the roof, looking at the small grave on the bamboo bank. Everything was quiet. But in my heart, for the first time, it was also quiet. I, Lan, have gone through a lifetime. A lifetime with love, with hate, with death, with karma. And finally, understand that there is no winner, no loser in resentment. Only those who know how to let go are truly free. End of Part 3. Karma Return. Closing the journey of Lan's soul, from victim to vengeful spirit, then to enlightened person.